Hey, a warm welcome to my friend Joe Register from Auto Care. Hello, Joe.
Hello, Carm. Good to see
I
you again.
I miss you, man. It was, Apex is coming up, and Joe and I usually sit in the studio and we talk about emerging tech, and it's going to be virtual this year. So I picked up the phone and said, "Hey, man, what's going on?" And we had one hell of a discussion, and we're going to bring it to our audience right now. You are working so hard to what I believe is to work with the standards in the industry, but also for a guy like me to demystify some of this crazy stuff that's going on.
Music to my ears. I hope I can do that for everyone listening, Carm. That's my objective.
Well, I know you brought some slides, so anyone
I
who's
did.
listening to this through audio will probably enjoy going. We'll release this as a video, and you can see some of Joe's slides. Now, you told me, hey, man, the fleet's getting older. OE has so many other things to worry about because of COVID, but yet we've got to march on with all of the initiatives that are going on with Vita Network, Vita Person, Vita Device, Vita I infrastructure. And, you are Mr. Acronym. So every once in a while, we may have to stop and say, what does that mean?
Yeah, just smack me one, Carm. That's what everybody else does. I try not to fall in the trap, but I'm sorry. There's potholes everywhere, so
Yeah,
sometimes I
sure there
do.
are. So what I wanted to really discuss in this episode was secure vehicle interface. We talked a lot about that together last year, and I know that if there's anything you're rocking on, it's got to be this.
It is indeed, yeah. And, I mean, it's from a standpoint of telematics, and, you want to go to the slides that just shows you what the typical dash looks like in a vehicle nowadays. It's craziness, Carm. You go into a vehicle. I mean, probably the most drastic example is, taking a Tesla vehicle, which has this, I don't know what size it is now, but this enormous screen. Formerly they're called HMIs, human machine interface. And they don't really have any other knobs and anything else on it. It's just, touch and off you go. But there's a wealth of data that's being collected from vehicles now, and you've got all these sensors all over, and those little round goodies that are all over the car show. There's information being collected, both inside the car as well as outside the car. I mean, I think a lot of people know that your rear view mirror is looking at you as you go down the road, and many people right now are looking for ways to get as accurate a picture of your attention as possible as you're rocketing down the road, because that's the other equation, right? So you put something on and it's automated, whether it's a cruise control device or whatever, and down the road you go, and the information is coming to you. But are you awake? How are you able to take over if you're supposed to? Which everything except level 5 is depending on the driver to be able to take over.
So driver attention has a lot to do with where we are with autonomy 3, autonomy 4. I mean,
Four, yeah,
5 is
five, yeah.
5 is pretty much going to say we don't care if you're awake or not.
Exactly, and this is why I think I mean, NHTSA took another run at these levels a couple years ago, as you know, and the reason they did is because it was starting to blur between 2s and 3s, especially, and people were trying to suggest they were 3.5s and et cetera. But the reality is, there's still a long way to go. We're not there yet, and despite the YouTube videos to the contrary.
I want to give you some homage here about the fact that you are working so hard with the International Organization of Standards,
Hmm.
more commonly called ISO. So I've already broken that acronym, ISO, and Joe's going to talk. Yeah, you're going to talk a lot about ISO, and you're constantly on calls. You work on an international basis for auto care, for our industry, to bring, I guess, sanity or a voice to what the standards are going to be. Thank you for doing that.
Thanks, Carm. I really appreciate it. And the number one thing I'm working on right now is, of course, the secure vehicle interface, as you mentioned. We've been working on this for some time. If you want to just go to the slide, I've got a couple of bullets that kind of show, the most important takeaways on SVI. And it really comes down to, understanding what is important to the vehicle owner and our position on vehicle data. And this kind of tees up why something like SVI is so necessary. I mean, you're aware we've got another right to repair amendment on the books right now in Massachusetts is coming up on the ballot in November. And this is really, all because we believe that you as an owner of your vehicle should have control over who has access to the information your vehicle creates. And you should, by have access yourself if you
Hmm.
want that information too. And then, the really important part about this from an aftermarket point of view is to be able to select your own service facility and be able to make sure your technicians have the same data that the dealership technicians have. um, the vehicle manufacturer is real interested in the data when they first release a vehicle when it's under warranty, but they lose interest as that vehicle starts to age. And so it ends up falling on the aftermarket to make sure that these very sophisticated machines operate the way they were intended past that warranty period.
Sophisticated machines
They are.
running like they anticipated. Just think of, it sends a chill over me when I think about even a 5-year-old vehicle, a 10-year-old vehicle, and we don't seem to want to care to bring that vehicle up to operating specs, and we take shortcuts all the time, and that's why there's so much pent-up maintenance out there, and need for repair.
Underperformed
Do,
maintenance is going to become even a greater issue.
Yeah,
Thanks for bringing
that
that
was
up.
my
Very
point.
important.
I was
Yeah.
going there. I mean, there's going to be a point in time where this vehicle is not, wait a minute, not even work the way it was intended, but to work safely.
And safety is a huge issue here. One of the real problems that we have too, and I'm just going to touch on one of my personal points here, which is I bought a brand new vehicle. The brand will remain nameless, but I'm sure this experience is the same regardless. And you go in and you spend $30,000 for a vehicle, and you go through this laborious process to get the actual vehicle in your hands, and then the salesman tosses you the keys and says, "Here you go, man. Have fun," right? And wait a minute. This thing I know has lot. Now, obviously, I'm going to slow him down. But many people would just take the keys and jump in the baby and off it goes. And then they would wonder what all those other controls are about and how they work. And I think, I mean, yeah, manufacturers, dealerships will tell you, oh, they have a whole process that they go through. But I didn't experience that when I bought the car. I don't know if you did, Carm.
Great point. I don't have a newer vehicle. My daughter does. It is fairly new. They covered a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. And unfortunately, it was more of the creature comforts, the center
Yeah.
stack, the cool thing with texting and music and, connecting to her phone. And then a few weeks later, she says, Dad, I think I'm going to turn off that lane keep thing. And she says, it's really bothering me and stuff. And I says, honey, do me a favor, hang in there. And, a few weeks later, when she started to really realize what it could do and what it was doing for her, she hasn't turned it off.
Well, and it's gratifying, to hear stories like that, Carm. So many times people do turn these safety devices off because they don't understand how they work and they don't understand how they're supposed to incorporate that in their driving. Let's face it. I mean, back when I started driving, back in when they started cranks on cars, you would jump in and everything was mechanical, Carm. Everything. right? The steering wheel actually worked with a connection directly to a worm roller gear that was, on a steering linkage, and that was the way it worked. But that's not the way it is anymore, and
It
everything's by wire.
it isn't. So as you work on this kind of global scale with the discussion on secure vehicle interface, you're really moving forward. I mean, I tell us that the progression of this universality that we should all come to expect. I mean, you're making headway, right?
Absolutely, Carmen. And if you want to throw up the next slide, it'll just list some of the important points about SVI, and then I'll talk about the progress we've made too. Um, so, I mean, my mantra, and I get some ribbing about this, but I say it so often: safe, secure, standardized, and direct access. Bye-bye, over and over and over again. But that's what's important. And quite frankly, these vehicles are built with features in mind, and the reality is that those features were in the minds of the vehicle manufacturers and maybe some focus groups and so forth, but they, you know, thinking about repairing these is very much an afterthought. I mean, you can tell directly by some of the quality of the information that the aftermarket receives about how to fix and repair these vehicles. I'd also suggest that they consider themselves quite often the owner of the data. Now, if you think about that in the context of your smartphone, you wouldn't appreciate that kind of an approach, right? I mean, that's your messages, that's your emails, that's your information. And you would take exception, and people do all the time when they find out that manufacturers of those devices have absconded with their data and may even be selling it to other people for profit. We just want to bring the same kind of sense to the vehicle, right? I mean, there's ways that we can connect directly with the vehicle, get the same information franchise dealers get, and in a way that is safe and secure and standardized. And that direct access is what enables the technicians to be able to, correct a faulty electronic module by applying the manufacturer's patch, just as a
Yeah.
franchise dealer
Yeah.
would be able to do.
Now,
Um,
let me put you on the spot.
okay.
Is Are we going to need a licensed individual to work with this data and make the kind of changes down the road?
I think that what's going to happen here is that if we don't, it's very likely that the manufacturers or other groups will start forcing the issue. So I'm a big proponent of taking matters into our own hands and talking actively with folks like ASE about how to get the proper training and the proper kind of validation of the skills a technician has before they actually jump into repairing a car. We're going to talk a little bit more about this if we get to a chance to talk about the ADAS piece in a little bit too.
And we
Um,
just to tell everyone that Joe and I are going to actually do 2 episodes during this recording, so you keep an eye out for me and Joe talking about ADAS in a second interview. I'm using the fact that his time's so valuable that we're going to record 2 episodes here together. Um, I appreciate that. Let me just make another little side gesture and say, are you going to do anything at Virtual Apex as far as being able to present emerging tech like you have done in the past?
Yes, and I'm sure that you are going through much of the same thing that we are, Carm, and trying to bring the same invigorating and exciting and state of the art content in a virtual world. It's not easy. You don't it's not a hot medium per se, right? So you don't have an opportunity to feed off of the people and see their reactions and tune what you're doing to to meet the interests of the people that you're working with. But yes, we do. As a matter of fact, we're anxious for everybody to come to the virtual Apex and to see the virtual booth that we'll have running that will actually provide some very exciting updates about SVI and some of the demos that we've had recently, which hopefully I'll get a chance to talk about in a minute. And the progress that we've made on the standards, and why this now we're coming out of the development phase, and we're now getting folks that are starting to adopt retrofit devices that are conformant with SVI, and very exciting.
aapexshow.com/register. And if you're not going to Virtual
Do
Apex, shame on you. And
absolutely.
for anything to see Joe's presentation, I mean, just go for that.
Well, thanks, Carm, and I'm sure Remarkable Radio will have a spot on that as well. So I'll return the favor. But
Thank you very much.
um,
Appreciate that. Yeah, I have to tell you something. I was so touched and honored that we did an ADAS Town Hall Academy last year, and
mhm,
Joe put a piece of that up in the big emerging tech booth last year. It was, I walked
did
by
indeed.
and I saw it, and I was just so tickled to see that. So yeah, you're doing everything you can to reach out to our industry. What a heck of a resource.
Well, thanks. I mean, I think, Carm, that what's happened with a lot of folks is they're just becoming a bit aware of this larger world and these larger kinds of connections and these bigger stories about, where to get help and where to get information and who's doing what. And please, I mean, keep up the great work in spreading the word about, the aftermarket solutions and the types of approaches that we take in order to try and bring the same capabilities to the aftermarket that the dealerships enjoy. Um, one of our big messages in all of this is that it's becoming so much that we're just part of a whole. So I have a slide here. I think that the SVI standards are not just for cars. Um, the standards that have been developed for SVI, and the previous slide had showed a URL to go to find out a lot more about those. So hopefully the viewers and listeners will go and seek that out. These are standards that are just as applicable for apps on your smartphone or for the roadside stations that are all along the road, part of this ITS infrastructure. So what we're really talking about is not just, vehicle related. The same standards are just as viable for these other devices, and folks are starting to become aware of that, and it's becoming a very exciting ecosystem that we're starting to talk about now, all based on these same standards. And of course, safe, secure, standardized, and direct access. As that ecosystem evolves, it's gonna create a whole new opportunity for people in developing solutions around this. And it's not only going to preserve competition, but it's going to encourage people to open up brand new markets within this world. And so this is now you're getting a peek at 2022 Apex and beyond.
Yeah, this is a great slide. If boy, I tell you, you got to watch the video. This is a really slick looking slide that shows people and cars and buildings and infrastructure and everything all over the world, remote servers. I mean, you really did a great job of making this a pictorial, if you will. And you know, we get a update on our smartphone, Joe, and then all of a sudden it starts acting smarter.
Yeah, it does. It
And
does.
we have to adapt, if you will, to, oh, well, that's interesting. Can I turn it on, do more with it, turn it off? And it's almost like it anticipated my next thought. Or, wow, I was on that website and now I'm seeing ads. The geofencing, all that stuff that's going on with our
Yeah.
smartphone. We have to stop and realize that we're probably more connected than we even think we are today.
Well, and you're going to be a lot more connected, Carm. You know how when you so let's say that we're going to go out and we're in Las Vegas next year when all of this is behind us and we want to get a
Hmm.
bite to eat. We're going to pull up our map. You know how that works, and
Yeah.
so you get your phone, you pull up your map, and so forth. Well, one of the things that will probably happen along with that in the future is that you will be connecting to as a pedestrian to this intelligent transport system. So now if we get excited and we see something else we want to go to across the street and we start to walk across the street, will actually be tracked as part of the ITS environment, and the vehicles will get information about us stepping off the curb before they even see us or before the sensors on the vehicle actually even know. And so that's the kind of connectedness that we're talking about in the future.
Totally amazing. I love it. Did you bring us any other slides? Yes, you did.
Yeah, I think
Yeah, here,
that
let me bring this other one up. This is great.
these are actually people who are working with us in Europe, and I just want to give a shout out to all these folks. The European Commission is actually a bit ahead of the U.S. in investigating the options for connectivity, and so we've been joining with a lot of other voices there to support this approach using SVI for safe, secure, standardized, and direct access. And the OEs have their own kind of proprietary way that they want to continue to move forward, but all these folks say, well, that doesn't really suit our needs. And so, as you can see here, there's some pretty big names. Folks like Michelin are on there with us, and folks like Munich, who are dongle manufacturers. Heck, they build the dongles for all of T-Mobile. And Enterprise Car Rental, no small company. Folks like Bridgestone and Goodyear, and Cooper Tire. Vallejo in Europe is a huge concern there, and Insurance Europe. These folks are all saying SVI is the right choice for moving forward, and we want to see how we can use it to be able to take the functionality we have today in a less secure environment and bring SVI standards to bear. So we know that all this communication that we have is safe and secure.
I'm curious, Joe, and I think I know the answer to this, but Enterprise and Avis are on this list. What's in it for them?
It's a great question, and I really appreciate you bringing those two up in specific, because those and all the tire manufacturers, they're competitors. Why would they come together and endorse something that maybe they could get at a competitive advantage and so forth? If you think about enterprise, so let's take a car rental, and I'll use enterprise as the example. So you return the car to enterprise, and the way that the car is set up now, it comes in, and you maybe have been driving it for a week. Um, you know, they look for obvious damage, but some people get pretty creative about returning a car and not wanting to get charged for damage. There's a story that's been circulating around a bit. You've probably already heard it, where at Enterprise somebody returned a car, and the car looked fine, but fortunately it was a savvy aftermarket guy that rented it next, and he noticed the car wasn't behaving normally, and so he did some investigation, pulled down the badge, and found out that the radar unit had been replaced, but the bracket was bent, and so it was pointing in the wrong direction. Now, being able to have a way to connect to the vehicle that isn't brand dependent, isn't model dependent. You don't have to be an expert on every vehicle to be able to attach and start being able to connect to these vehicles, not to mention the fact that people download all their contact lists and everything else into this thing. And so being able to connect to clear all that in the same predictable way across brands is very attractive. That's kind of some of the use cases that the enterprise folks have shared with us.
So interesting. Do we have another slide?
One last slide, and this one is just to say that when you get a chance to go online, please go to this www.sviformobility.org website, and take a look at. There is a um, very lengthy webinar that's available on that page as well that goes into great depth. But in specific, there's a actual Michelin demonstration, and this one is a collaborative effort between Michelin, Enterprise, Group Auto, a big repair facility in Europe, and Munich, who creates the Michelin dongle. And this is all retrofit stuff, but they have a device that actually releases air on their run flat tire, and then to simulate some kind of a hazard having been collected off the road, the the tire deflates, and so immediately the app comes up and says, warning, pressure loss has been detected. And now what happens is, because all these folks are using the same standards to get information, they can start sharing this problem across all these various stakeholders. And so they contact Enterprise. Enterprise dispatches a wrecker. They come and bring the vehicle into a shop to have it repaired, and it's all done based on the same set of standards. So no one has to have some kind of protracted proprietary discussions about, well, here's the way mine works and here's the way mine works, and back and forth with trying to figure out how to connect. And one of the things I'll tell you, I'm really delighted, is that when we started working with Michelin and Munich, Munich was able to take their existing dongle and to convert it to be SVI conformant in a matter of a few weeks. It was not some enormous process that took, you know, 3 man years and a whole bunch of money to do. So they were extremely pleased about that, and this whole demo was put together in the matter of a few short months.
I think we can realize the need for the standard. Uh, as you marched down this challenge, of working with ISO and all these companies and bringing your passion for the aftermarket to it, any major challenges that you have seen along the way? I hit a chord that you've seen, but then they got worked out, and finally, you almost started to see progress.
Well, sure. I mean, when you're sitting down at a group of folks who are not used to working together, Carm, and many of these, I mean, there's countless work groups between all these different organizations, whether it's ISO or SAE or IEEE, which is the Electronic Engineers Group, and so forth. Everybody has a different idea. Everybody has their own perspective on how things should work. And that actually is what makes it so rich. It actually is what makes it so valuable a process. We've had some challenges in still getting the vehicle manufacturers to work with us. They are resistant to bringing the aftermarket in, and having conversations with them kind of on an equal footing, which is what the standards organizations provide. It's a level playing field for everybody's input. But that said, I mean, we've made some great strides with tier 1 suppliers and tier 2 suppliers and so forth, and the people who are providing the automakers with the systems that they're installing in their vehicles. I mean, more and more, even the design work, in no small part, is being done by third parties, Carm. And so what we're finding now is that, we may be talking to some group that, are very active and have been active in smartphones forever, but now they're working in vehicles because they're the experts on this particular kind of connectivity and so forth. So I think there was some surprises who we were talking to, who was willing to talk and who wasn't willing to talk, and then the fact that we made the progress as quickly as we did. A lot of people told us this was going to be a decade-long effort, and we were actually able to accomplish securing the device in a matter of 3 short years. So that was actually pretty quick.
Did the phone ever ring and someone picked up the phone and said, "Joe, what is it with you guys and the OEs?"
Yeah, all the time. As a matter of fact, sometimes it's even our some of our organizations that are out there that are wondering why we can't get along better. And here's some irony here for you, Carm. The whole reason we started down this SVI road to begin with was because the an industry association representing the OEs said, you have to talk to us with a single voice. If you want us to listen, we don't we can't listen to 5 or 6 different groups attempting to represent the aftermarket. You need to come together. The second thing they said is, quit telling us what you don't want and tell us what you do want. Now, I suspect they didn't know we would go to the extremes that we've gone to make that abundantly clear. But certainly they are the ones who really inspired all of this work. And so I tip my hat to the set of circumstances that created this opportunity. But certainly I think everybody's benefiting, and in the long run, I believe that the vehicle manufacturers will also see the value to these designs.
It's been much too long that we got together to hear an update from you, but guess what? I know you've been busy, and that's a good thing for all of us. Joe's going to have a great virtual booth at Virtual Apex, aapex show.com/register. You got to get there. Not only for all the great training, the free training. I mean, Apex Virtual is free. So, I mean, I can't even imagine someone not wanting to be playing in that arena for November 3rd, 4th, and 5th coming up here in a few weeks. And I hope to get this podcast episode out soon so that we can catch a few more people who maybe haven't registered.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being in. As I said, much too long. It's been a year, I think, since we've gotten together. And I've got to promise my audience that we'll get your brain power on here more sooner than later. But now let us get prepared to do our ADAS episode and just kind of tease our audience that that's coming.
Thanks, Carm. I really appreciate it, and always a pleasure. So anytime, my friend.
Thank you, man.